If we were to discuss the most intricate and multifaceted religion in the world, one contender stands out above all others: Hinduism. Wikipedia says Hindus can be polytheistic, pantheistic, panentheistic, pandeistic, henotheistic, monotheistic, monistic, agnostic, atheistic, or humanist. We will try to see all these aspects of the religion as we trace through the last 4000 years of this religion, if I may even call it a religion. Because Hinduism is not just one religion, it's more of an umbrella term, a shorthand for a galaxy of ancient Indian traditions. This story is about how the umbrella grew so big, and more importantly, how all those traditions, beliefs, rituals, and philosophies managed to coexist without turning into a cosmic family feud. Most major religions follow a top down approach, from God to people, a set of guiding principles delivered by God or a divine messenger, which were then spread to the masses. But Hinduism follows a bottom up approach, from people to God. It's more about seeking those principles. It's less about receiving answers and more about asking the questions. A spiritual inquiry into the search of God or the ultimate truth. To pursue the truth, people took diverse approaches, in turn making Hinduism diverse. Trying to find the start point of this tradition is like tracing the source of a river, only to discover it's fed by countless smaller streams, springs, and rainstorms. This video is not about the various Hindu gods or beliefs, but more on how the religion came into existence, flourished, and evolved. It's more about the dynamic nature of Hinduism. We will try to comprehend this vast religion on the basis of scriptures that define the religion in different stages of its existence. So let's dive in it together and trace this epic journey from Sanaatan Dharm to what we now call Hinduism. Our story begins in Africa, the cradle of humanity. It was from here that the first wave of humans set out on their long journey, eventually reaching Indian subcontinent around 70,000 BCE. These early migrants settled across the land, becoming what we might call the indigenous people of the region. The second wave of migration brought another group of people into the area, whom we now associate with Indus Valley civilization. Around 7000 BCE, they began settling along the fertile banks of Indus, Saraswati, and other rivers in the Sub-Sindhu region. Agriculture will start soon, and over the next several millennia, these communities would thrive, nurtured by the rich and abundant land surrounding the Indus and Saraswati rivers. Let's step into the streets of Mohenjo-daro, where people traded pottery and beads, took a dip in the Great Bath, and probably gossiped about who left the drain uncovered. This was the Indus Valley civilization, thriving around 2500 BCE, with 5 major cities and numerous smaller towns and villages, spread across approximately 1.25 million square kilometers. The IVC was larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Their baked brick walls and advanced city layouts, complete with the grid-like pattern, showcased an impressive flair for urban planning. What about their spirituality? While they didn't have any towering temples, the seals depicting a horned proto-Shiv figure, swastik symbol, and ritualistic bath suggest that they were more than just master builders. They had a spiritual side too. Around 1900 BCE, the climate began to shift. The once mighty Saraswati River started to dry up. Gradually, the people of the IVC began migrating eastward and up the Saraswati River. There they encountered indigenous communities who already inhabited the area. These were the people from the first migration. There is not much known about these people, but they possibly had some kind of nature worshipping traditions. The population from the lower part of IVC will move further south into the South India, eventually giving rise to Dravidian culture. No wonder why South India has got unique architecture and beautiful Hindu temples. About the same time, another group enters the subcontinent. Steppe herders from the grasslands of modern-day Ukraine and South Russia are famously known as Indo-Aryans. Interestingly, genetic studies show that this group majorly consisted of men. This third wave of migration brought nomads skilled in composing hymns in Proto-Sanskrit language, Some were tired of their semi-nomadic lifestyles into India, and of course, the horses. This great cultural blending between IVC's urban sophistication, indigenous communities' love for nature, and Indo-Aryans' fierce rituals and hymns laid the foundation of what we refer to as Sanaatan Dharm, where Sanatan reflects the eternal and unchanging truth derived from the Ved, and Dharm signifies one's duty to uphold cosmic order, Rit, and maintain social harmony. Over time, as these three communities intermingled, they created a rich tradition of beliefs, practices, and philosophies. Around 1500 BCE, after centuries of cultural fusion, we entered the Vedic age. It was during this period when Rig Ved, first of the four Ved, was composed. This was followed by Sam Ved, Yajur Ved, and Atharv Ved. Together, these texts laid the rich philosophical and spiritual foundation for what we recognize as the world's oldest religion. Each of the four Ved is divided into four distinct parts. Samhita. This is the core text of the Ved and contains hymns, and specific parts of these hymns are called mantra. Generally, when someone references one of the Ved, they are talking about this portion. Second part is Brahman. These are the prose texts that provide detailed explanation on the rituals and sacrifices associated with the Samhita. They include instructions, interpretations, and discussion on the ceremonial aspect of the Vedic practices. Then we have Aranyak. Translating to forest text, these writings were meant to study and meditation in isolation, away from the distractions of the society. The Aranyak serve as a bridge between the ritualistic focus of the Brahmins and philosophical depth of the Upanishad. Fourth and the last part is Upnishad, also known as Vedant, which means the end of the Ved. These are the concluding parts of the Ved. They delve into philosophical and mystical concepts, focusing on the nature of soul, ultimate reality, and liberation. Many Upanishads are drawn from the concluding parts of Aranyak and other parts of the Ved. These four divisions of Ved are also associated with the four stages of Vedic life: Brahmacharya, Grihast, Vanprasth, and Sannyas. The four Ved are collectively referred to as Shruti, meaning that which is heard, and are regarded as Apurusha, that means not of the human origin. They are believed to have been realized by sages or the rishis in deep meditative states. Rishis were the revered sages and seers who are believed to be enlightened through meditation and other practices, thus having a deep connection with the universe. All other religious texts outside Ved are considered as Smriti, meaning that which is remembered. Unlike Shruti, Smriti texts are considered to have human origin. They are often inspired by the divine wisdom. The concept of Shruti highlights the oral transmission of Ved, where preserving the exact pronunciation, intonation, and content became paramount. This was achieved through the Gurukul system, employing rigorous memorization technique. This was the system of education based on mentorship and living in close proximity with the teacher, often in an ashram during the Brahmacharya stage of Vedic life. Here Guru means teacher and Kul means family, referring to the teacher as the new family. Subjects taught were diverse, majorly focusing on Vedic text, which is diverse in itself. One important point to note is that these were not religious schools. While the education was rooted in spiritual framework, but goal was to develop a well-rounded individual capable of fulfilling their societal roles. This nurturing of mind from the early age will provide the educational backbone for the society to flourish. In 2003, UNESCO recognized the significance of this tradition by declaring Vedic chanting a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. These methods were so effective that even today, mantra chanting remains remarkably similar to how it was thousands of years ago when it first originated. Samhita portion of Ved, especially Rig Ved, seems to be influenced by Indo-Aryan traditions, as many of the rituals and prominent gods mentioned in early texts, such as Indra, Agni, and Varun, shows connection to the European origin of similar gods. In contrast, the later Ved, Arnakya, and Upanishad are thought to have evolved from the practices and philosophies of Indus Valley and indigenous people, as the Indo-Aryan did not traditionally practice this type of introspective spiritual inquiry. Overall, these texts are cumulative work and were developed over a couple of centuries, reflecting evolving societal beliefs, rituals, and traditions of the era. Let's now explore the four Ved and see what they contain. These scriptures are vast and profound. For now, we will just touch on them to grasp their essence and understand why they hold what they hold. Rig Ved. The Rig Ved is the earliest of the Vedic scriptures, dated to around 1500 to 1200 BCE. It is primarily a collection of 1028 hymns called Sukt, arranged in 10 books called Mandal. These hymns are dedicated to a variety of deities, with primary emphasis on Agni, Indra, Varun, Surya, Yam, Prithvi, Vayu. There is also a mention of Som, a ritual drink with mystical significance. These hymns are deeply poetic and philosophical, exploring themes such as the creation of the universe and the cosmic order, called Rit. During this time, society was largely pastoral and semi-nomadic. Elements of agriculture develops gradually, as stated in the Vedic text itself, but for the time being, people relied heavily on the natural elements for survival. So the hymns naturally reflected gratitude towards these nature gods. Praise of deity is a central theme. Samved. The Samved consists of 1549 hymns, most of which are borrowed from the Rig Veda but rearranged and set to a specific melody for chanting. This focus on musical chanting was believed to invoke divine energy and harmony. It is regarded as the foundation of Indian classical music and highlights the spiritual power of sound. This musical chanting was aimed to connect the human and divine, creating a sense of universal balance. Yajurved. By this time, society was growing larger, agriculture was flourishing, and the rise of kings and larger establishment brought about a need for more elaborate rituals. The Yajurved served as a practical guidebook, offering instructions for performing rituals including the grand ones like Rajsu Yajna and Ashwamedh Yajna. The text emphasizes the precision of rituals and role of sacrifices in maintaining the cosmic order, Rit, which was central to Vedic belief. Atharvaved. By this time, society has grown even more complex, transitioning into a settled agricultural economy. The concern of daily life, like health, social harmony, and spirituality, took the central stage. The Atharvaved reflects this shift, offering 731 hymns across 20 books. Unlike the Ved, it focuses on practical solutions for everyday issues, such as curing disease, protecting crops from pests, and even dealing with the troublesome neighbors. With its blend of mysticism and practicality, it caters both worldly and spiritual needs. Transition from early to later Vedic age. During the early Vedic period, settlements were primarily concentrated in the regions of modern-day Punjab and Haryana. This is evident from the text, which often references the sacred and mighty Saraswati River. However, by the later Vedic period, the Ganga River began to gain prominence as people migrated and settled across the fertile plains of the Ganga basin. This shift saw the emergence of new urban centers, Mahajanpad, in regions like modern-day Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and many parts of Madhya Pradesh. States like Magad, Kaushala, Kashi, Vatsa, Avanti rose to prominence, laying the groundwork for the future political and cultural development. By this time, society was completely settled into agriculture society. Thus, we also see a shift toward vegetarianism in general population. This preference of food derived by non-violent means will be cherished through the entire history of the religion. As society expanded, the Varn system gained prominence to ensure social harmony and functional division of labor. Initially, this system was flexible, allowing movement between different Varn based on one's quality, called Gun, and action, Karma. The four Varn were Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Brahmin was the priestly class and responsible for spiritual and intellectual pursuits. Kshatriya was the warrior and ruler class, tasked with the governance and protection. Vaishya were the merchant and agriculturalist class, managing trade and agriculture. Shudra was the laborer and service provider class. However, over time, this system became rigid, transitioning to a hereditary model based on birth rather than the personal qualities or actions. This shift would profoundly impact Hindu society for centuries to come. As culture moved deeper into the Indian subcontinent, they encountered new tribes and communities who were being introduced to Vedic traditions. Interestingly, this exchange wasn't one sided. The indigenous traditions also influenced Vedic beliefs, contributing to an overhaul of religious practices. This period of integration and transformation set the stage for emergence of great epics, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, which would reshape Hindu spirituality and culture forever. The Upnishadic age. This was the transformative period in Hindu thought. Society was thriving in Indo-Gangetic plain with ample resources that allowed sages and scholars the freedom to engage in deep philosophical inquiry. It was during this period that Hinduism transformed from its earlier emphasis on Vedic rituals to a more introspective and metaphysical exploration of reality. Discussion about nature of self, Atma, the ultimate reality, Brahm, and liberation, Moksha, became the central themes. Upanishad deeply ponder on the philosophical and existential questions, making them timeless in their relevance and intellectual depth. It was also at this time that the groundwork was laid for the emergence of Buddhism and Jainism, both of which drew on thoughts from Upanishad while offering their own distinct perspective. The list of 108 Upanishad comes from the Muktika Upanishad, which categorizes them into groups associated with the four Veda. Out of these 13 are considered to be the principal Upanishad. In reality, however, there are more than 200 Upanishad that have been documented over time. Each one contributes uniquely to the philosophical, spiritual, and devotional dimension of Hinduism. This was the era when the great Hindu epics, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, began to take written form. Although their oral traditions have existed for centuries. The Ramayana, according to the astronomical references within the text, dates to around 7000 BCE, while planetary data suggests the event of the Mahabharata occurred around 3000 BCE. These epics were likely written down between 7th to 4th century BCE for Ramayana and is attributed to Rishi Valmiki, while for Mahabharata it is 4th century BCE to 4th century and attributed to Ved Vyas. Interestingly, the Sanskrit used in these texts is not Vedic Sanskrit but a transitional form between Vedic and classical Sanskrit. These epics, filled with the tale of dharma and devotion, became central to Hindu philosophy and daily life. They went beyond religion, profoundly shaping societal norms, moral values, and cultural identity of the Indian subcontinent. By this time, society has grown more and more complex, with new kings, kingdoms, and towns emerging. To ensure proper societal functioning, Shastra were composed. The term Shastra refers to the authoritative text or treatise that provide structured knowledge on specific disciplines. Rooted in the Ved, Shastra covered a wide range of subjects, including philosophy, law, ethics, art, and sciences. Key categories include Dharm Shastra, focused on law, ethics, and social duties. Arth Shastra, concerned with economics, statecraft, and politics. Kam Shastra, related to pleasure, relationship, and aesthetics. Yog Shastra, on spiritual practices and meditation. Shastra on arts and sciences, covering subjects like music, art, architecture, astronomy, grammar, and medicine. Smriti text is the subset of Shastra. They provide detailed practical guidelines for human conduct, ethics, and societal organization. There are various Smriti texts, but Manu Smriti, also known as Manav Dharm Shastra, is worth mentioning because it played a pivotal role in rigidifying the Varna system by enforcing division by birth rather than the merit or action, thus, in the process, transforming Varna into caste. Genetic studies indicate that after 100 BCE, intermixing between different Varnas significantly decreased. However, this rigid system was not practiced across India, as regional variations in Smriti and Dharm Shastra created a diverse societal norm across India. During this time, around 600 BCE, Takshashila was also established in the modern day Pakistan. Often considered as one of the world's first universities, it became a center of learning in subjects such as Ved, Ayurveda, archery, astronomy, mathematics, darshan, politics. There was a strong focus on Vedic and Upnishadic studies along with Buddhist teachings. This educational hub is worth mentioning because this place will be the epicenter of lot of activities which directly or indirectly will affect Hinduism. Notable alumni include Chanakya, author of the Arthashastra, and Panini, the grammarian who codified Sanskrit grammar in his work Ashtadhyayi. Panini's contribution helped develop one of the world's earliest grammatically precise language, often referred to as classical Sanskrit, which played a crucial role in the linguistic expansion of Hinduism during the Puranic age. This period also saw the rise of 6 schools of Hindu philosophy, collectively called Darshan, which translates to viewpoint or perspective. These are categorized as Astic or Orthodox thought school because they accept the authority of the Ved. Here is a brief overview. Sankhya. The Sankhya school is a dualistic philosophy that explained liberation as the realization of distinct nature of Purush, that is consciousness, and Prakriti, that is matter or nature. Yoga. Liberation is achieved by stilling the mind through ethical and meditative discipline. Nyaya. The school of logic and reasoning, focusing on valid knowledge, Praman, as the path to liberation. Vaisheshik. Understanding realities, fundamental categories that are atoms, time, and space leads to liberation. Mimamsa. This school emphasizes Vedic rituals and duties to maintain cosmic harmony. Vedanta. Liberation lies in realizing the relationship of Atma and Brahman. Vedanta further has 3 major thought schools. Advaita Vedanta. This non-dualism asserts that Atma and Brahman are identical, and liberation is through realizing this oneness. Vashisht Advaita Vedanta. This is a qualified non-dualism and teaches that Atma is distinct yet inseparable from Brahman, like a part-whole relationship, emphasizing devotion, bhakti, to realize the distinction. Dvaita Vedanta. This is a dualism holding Atma and Brahman as eternally separate, with liberation through devotion and grace. In contrast to Astic school, the Gnostic school reject the Vedic authority and offered alternate perspective. These thought schools flourished alongside, and some of them will even go on to form major religions. Charvak. They denied the existence of God, the soul, and an afterlife, focusing solely on direct perception, Pratyaksh Praman, as the only valid source of knowledge. It emphasized worldly enjoyment as life's purpose and accepts the existence of free will. Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautam, also known as Shakyamuni Buddha, in 5th century BCE, Buddhism offered a path based on ethical living and meditation. It spread widely across Asia, especially during the reign of King Ashoka. Jainism, formalized around 6th century BCE by Vardhaman Mahavir, 24th Tirthankar. Jainism emphasized ahimsa, that is non-violence, as its highest virtue, along with other guiding principles. This is often termed as the most peaceful religion. Ajivik. This school advocated absolute determinism, niyati, and denied free will, asserting that all events are preordained by natural law. This school has no surviving direct text. The most of what we know comes from Buddhist and Jain sources. Vedic Sanskrit, a language of rituals and scholars, saw transformation during this period. Panini's work formalized classical Sanskrit, making it more structured and accessible, serving as a common medium for religious, scholarly, and administrative purposes. This highly structured language still was not the language of common people, but played a pivotal role in unifying ancient India. It became the medium for documenting deep philosophical concepts, rituals, traditions, and legal systems from diverse regions across the subcontinent, all in a single cohesive language. Prakrit dialects in the north and Tamil in the south served majorly as the language of everyday life. To bridge this gap, Sanskrit texts were often adapted into regional languages, especially Puran, covering topics as diverse as cosmology, mythology, ethics, philosophy, pilgrimage, and worship practices. Puranic Age. As time progressed, Hinduism began spreading across Indian subcontinent, extending into South India and integrating a vast array of local deities and belief systems. The expansion of religion was not forced. Instead, religion was woven around the regional traditions and practices, keeping religious core alive and accommodating for regional gods and traditions. This is the time when all regional deities such as Gram Devta, Isht Devta, Kul Devta or Devi were accommodated in Puranic framework, giving relevance to them and acceptance to people. The Puranic period marked a major transformation in Hinduism, giving rise to its form as it is widely recognized today. The Puran introduced major Hindu deities such as Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiv, along with their feminine counterparts, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Parvati or Durga. Countless other deities were also incorporated into the religious framework, making the divine more personal and accessible to common people. This shift addressed the lack of emotional connection found in earlier Vedic practices, leading to a widespread acceptance. The Puran also played a crucial role in unifying diverse belief systems across the subcontinent. Local deities and gods were woven into Puranic literature, standardizing their identities and making them relatable across regions. This synthesis created a shared religious vocabulary, fostering the cultural unity while respecting local traditions. Bhakti or tradition also gained prominence during this period, a path emphasizing personal devotion to deity, where liberation or moksha is achieved through surrender, selfless devotion, and emotional connection with the deity or the divine. This approach is similar to meditation but focuses on the divine figure, infused Hinduism with new vitality, and encouraged widespread spiritual engagement. Bhakti cut through all the barriers of the caste and thus became very central to religion and society. The Puran drew heavily from philosophical teachings of the Ved, blending them with local beliefs and practices. This created texts centered on moral, societal, and religious conduct, and ensuring their relevance to the common people. Puran were scriptures which talked about the whole Indian subcontinent, as text from Vishnu Puran clearly list the topographical features and people of the ancient India. So these were the earliest texts which conforms and binds the whole region under one belief system. The epics Ramayana and Mahabharata also continued to inspire mass devotion, leading to the construction of temples and shrines across India. This period can be termed as the Renaissance of Hindu culture, as iconic temples, sculptures, paintings, and most of the revered symbols of Hindu heritage belong to this period. These temples became centers of worship and cultural activity, unifying religious practices and providing the cohesiveness that Hinduism required as it spread. Traditionally, there are 18 Mahapuran and 18 Uppuran, making a total of 36 recognized Puran. These texts not only shape religious thought but also contributed to the emergence of four major sects in Hinduism. Vaishnavism, worship of Vishnu and his avatar like Ram and Krishna. Shaivism, worship of Shiv as the supreme being. Shaktism, devotion to the divine mother, Devi, Durga, Kali. Smartism, a liberal tradition emphasizing the worship of multiple deities, Shiv, Vishnu, Devi, Ganesh, Surya, while recognizing the unity underlying all forms. These sects were henotheistic in nature. Each sect regarded one deity as supreme but acknowledges the existence and significance of other deities, a concept distinct from the monotheistic approach of Abrahamic religions, which often considered the other gods as false god. This period also saw the gradual formation of Hindu identity from its Sanaatan Dharm roots. Interestingly, the term Hindu was originally a geographic or cultural marker rather than the religious designation. The Vedic name for the Indus River is Sindhu, but the Persians, unable to correctly pronounce S's, referred to it as Hindu to describe the land and people beyond the Indus. When this term reached the Greeks, it became Indic or Indos, eventually evolving into India in Latin. The land came to be known as India or Hindustan and its people Hindu. Puranic name of India is Bharatvarsh, where Bha means light or knowledge, Rat means engaged in or devoted to, and Varsh signifies the geographical region. Thus, Bharatvarsh can be interpreted as the land devoted to the pursuit of light or knowledge. Bharat name can also be traced back to the name of a prominent tribe in Vedic society and land or lineage of the legendary ruler of ancient India, King Bharat. Early modern period. Up until this period, India had largely remained free from foreign influence on its society and religion. However, over the next 800 years, this would change dramatically. The first Muslim conquest began as early as 711 CE with the capture of Sindh region. Although initially confined to that area, repeated raids and invasions eventually overcame local resistance, and after 500 years, in 1206 CE, Delhi Sultanate was established, marking the beginning of significant Muslim presence in northern India. Over time, the Sultanate expanded southward and eventually the Mughal Empire was formed, encompassing almost all of the modern India. During this period, Hindu temples faced destruction, libraries were burnt, religious conversions were underway, and heavy taxes were smashed on non-Muslims. Hindus adapted to these challenges in various ways by relocating idols, building new temples in safer areas, or by focusing on domestic and community-centered worship when public temple practices were constrained. The Bhakti movement gained immense momentum during this era, with saints like Kabir, Mirabai, and Tulsidas composing hymns in regional languages, keeping the spirit of Hinduism alive among ordinary people. Hindu sects continued to evolve during this period. New communities emerged emphasizing personal devotions, simple rituals, and saintly gurus over the traditional Vedic sacrificial traditions. The Bhakti tradition promoted a direct connection with the divine, making spiritual practices more accessible to the masses. Sufism, a mystic Islamic tradition, paralleled the Bhakti movement in its emphasis on divine love, moral integrity, and devotion. In some regions, this shared focus led to the cultural exchange, with Hindus and Muslims participating in each other's festival or revering shared saints even amid ongoing conflicts. This period also saw the birth of Sikhism in the late 15th century, founded by Guru Nanak Dev. Deeply influenced by Hindu and Sufi traditions, Sikhism emphasized universal principles such as religious liberty, social equality, and human dignity. Sikh gurus and their followers stood against oppression, most notably in 1675, when Guru Tegh Bahadur was executed by Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb for defending Kashmiri Pandits against forced conversions. Sikhism is also considered a Dharmic religion because it originated in Indian subcontinent and shares the concept of Dharm with Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Throughout the history, the Kingdom of Nepal remained a Hindu state, preserving its religious identity despite the challenges sweeping across the subcontinent. Nepal would continue to be referred to as the world's only Hindu kingdom, even during and after the colonial period, until 2008, when the monarchy was abolished and state became secular. Around the turn of 16th century, Christianity was introduced to the Indian subcontinent by Portuguese who landed in Goa. They were soon followed by Dutch, British, and French, further expanding India's religious landscape. This interaction not only brought Hinduism to the attention of the Western world, but also brought Western religious and philosophical influences into India. Modern Hinduism. As the British Empire extended into Indian subcontinent in late 18th century, they sought to create a unified legal framework to govern India's highly diverse communities. The vastness and fluidity of Hindu belief baffled colonial administrators, who were accustomed to more uniform religious systems like Christianity or Islam. In their search for an authoritative code to govern Hindus, they turned to Sanskrit text and elevated the Manusmriti, treating it as a pan-Indian legal constitution. However, Hindu practices have always varied wildly by religion, community, and sect, and no single text has ever held supreme authority in all matters of law for Hindus. By institutionalizing Manusmriti, the British rigidified views on caste, inheritance, and women's right, marking the first time that all Hindus were governed by a single legal framework based on a narrow interpretation of Hindu texts. During this time, Indology, the study of Indian culture and tradition, emerged as an academic discipline, led by Western scholars like Max Muller and John Withrow. Earlier work on Hinduism was heavily influenced by Western biases and often framed Hinduism as primitive or less developed compared to the Abrahamic religions. For instance, Max Muller initially approached the Ved with the assumption that ancient equated to less advanced, applying Western notion of progress and linear development to Indian thought. Earlier Indological work often misunderstood Hinduism, presenting it to the West as unsophisticated and rigid. However, over decades of studying the Ved and engaging with Indian scholar, Muller developed a profound respect for the philosophical and spiritual depth of Hinduism. He later praised the Upanishad, calling them unparalleled in their metaphysical subtlety, and became an advocate for Hindu thought. Meanwhile, Christian missionary efforts were actively converting Hindus during the colonial period, promoting Christianity as a superior religion. This caused significant social and religious shift in some areas. In 1893, Swami Vivekananda addressed the Parliament of World's Religion in Chicago, presenting Hinduism as tolerant and universal religion based on the unity of all existence. His speech challenged Western stereotypes and redefined Hinduism in global context. By using English effectively, Vivekananda tapped into the global intellectual climate, partly shaped by the Indological studies. He encountered colonial misinterpretations of Hinduism and offered a modern, inclusive vision of Hindu Dharma. Certain Hindu ideals, such as ahimsa, that is non-violence, and the concept of Ram Rajya, that is ideal governance, were integrated into the Indian freedom struggle. Figures like Bal Gangadhar Tilak gave new significance to Hindu festivals, such as transforming Ganesh Chaturthi into mass gathering that fostered unity, cultural pride, and political awareness, further fueling nationalism and the struggle for independence. These efforts leveraged Hindu cultural symbols for nationalistic purposes. However, in postmodern India, Hindutva as the political identity became a point of contention. Unlike the spiritual and inclusive values of Hindu Dharma, the Hindutva movement, often driven by political motives, sometimes at the cost of the religion's philosophical and ethical core. Efforts are ongoing to address caste-based discrimination and eliminate other social religious biases. While many challenges persist, modern Hinduism remains a dynamic tradition, balancing its ancient philosophical roots with contemporary values. Global interest in practices like yoga, meditation, and Vedantic philosophy continues to grow, offering Hinduism a global platform unlike ever before. The identity of Hinduism is a complex and layered one, shaped by centuries of history and tradition. Unfortunately, much of the narrative surrounding Hinduism has often been influenced by foreign perspectives, with limited focus on genuine religious introspection. What makes Hinduism truly unique is its dynamic nature. There is hardly any other religion in the world as adaptable, constantly evolving, and shredding practices that no longer serve a meaningful purpose in society. The unifying principles across this vast and eternal tradition, and indeed across all Dharmic religions, are Dharma, living a life of moral and ethical integrity; Karma, the idea that one's actions determine future experiences, without the concept of eternal heaven or hell due to one's actions; Cyclical nature of existence, cycle of birth, death, and rebirth continues until moksha or liberation is achieved, signifying unity with the divine. Like many religions centered around a single deity or prophet, Sanaatan Dharm or Hinduism is not a religion of the god, but rather a religion of the land. It embodies an innate capacity to integrate countless gods, paths, and philosophies into the collective civilizational identity, one that remains ever evolving while staying deeply rooted in the soil and the spirit of Bharat. This was the story of Hinduism, or perhaps more appropriately, the story of Hindu civilization. Namaste.